The very first time I ever met him, as soon as he walked into the room, standing over 6 feet tall with perfect posture, I immediately noticed he had an aura about him, a self-confidence that I had never seen in anyone before. He was that self-confident in himself that he was wearing a skin-tight silver Nike shirt. And let me tell you, this guy was buff. You want to know what he did for a living? Are you thinking he was a male model or maybe a pro athlete? No, he was a gastroenterologist. You know, a doctor who scopes down throats and scopes up, well, you know where, to do a colonoscopy. His name was Dr. O. At least that's what I'm going to call him for my story. And Dr. O was a world-renowned doctor working at a world-renowned hospital system. And that's why my husband Mark and I were there. Mark was now 7 years into his cancer journey, and for the first time, Mark's cancer was actually stable. But he had developed a tight stricture in his esophagus from all the treatments. He was eating, but not well. So since his cancer was currently stable, the doctors thought it was a good time to address the swallowing issues. And that's why Mark was referred to Dr. O. Now, at that first appointment, I had to really concentrate as Dr. O, sitting there in that skin-tight shirt, started to tell us about a procedure that only he was doing. And at that point, he had only performed 5 himself. But he proudly boasted that he was 5 for 5. He told us that Mark's case was a bit more complicated. But he assured us that with his expertise, he could perform this procedure safely on Mark. And he even told Mark he'd have him eating turkey by Thanksgiving. This was September already. Mark was ecstatic. He never thought his cancer would be stable. And here was a doctor telling him he could help him with his swallowing issues. I wasn't as excited about this procedure. Mark had been through a lot in 7 years, and I was worried that if this procedure didn't go as well as Dr. O said it would, and if worse, caused more quality of life issues, I didn't know if Mark could handle it at that time. And to be honest, I didn't know if I could. Now, Dr. O had already told us that Mark's case was a bit more complicated, but he didn't tell us how complicated, and he didn't mention a one risk. So me, being me, I started asking him a lot of questions, and he didn't like it one bit. He refused to answer even one of my questions. He looked right at me and he said, "I don't understand. Why don't you trust me? Mark does." There was something about his tone and the way he looked at me and the way he put me up against Mark. Of course I wanted Mark to eat better. So I did something that day that I'll probably never do again, so you might want to write it down. Because that was the day that Marianne Sheely shut her mouth. I know, it's quite shocking, isn't it? It's a decision that I regretted immediately after the procedure. I'm not going to go into any details what happened that day. But Mark didn't eat turkey on Thanksgiving, and Dr. O is now 5 for 6. And for 6 months, he kept telling us that he could reverse what happened. So he did procedure after procedure, and eventually, he actually passed Mark on to another doctor at a completely different health system who had to tell Mark he was never going to eat or drink by mouth again. And that's the doctor who had to surgically place Mark's feeding tube, not Dr. O. Mark went into a deep depression. And I actually blamed myself because I felt as Mark's wife and healthcare advocate, I should not have allowed someone to intimidate me just because of who they were. And I vowed I would never let that happen again. Now anybody that knows me knows that I now question everything. Eventually, Mark and I took a mindfulness class and practiced yoga and started meditating. But we both were holding on tight to anger that we still felt towards Dr. O for not telling us the risk. The day that Dr. O passed Mark on to another doctor, We never heard from him again until 3 years later when we received this letter. Dear Mark and Marianne, I have thought about the both of you often the past 3 years, especially now as I face my own health challenge. I have a brain tumor, and I'm afraid I don't have very much time left. I wanted the both of you to know that I really thought I could help Mark, even though I knew his case was extremely complicated. I realize now I let my ego get in the way. I should have told you the risk. I hope someday you both can forgive me. Sincerely, Dr. O. That letter wasn't going to change what happened, but Dr. O gave us a gift because Mark and I could now let go of the anger that we had been holding on to, because Mark and I now saw Dr. O in a completely different light. We now saw him as only human. Thank you.